Chapter 2: Fear and the Brain.
Fear is deeply rooted in the brain's biological and neurological processes. Understanding how fear is processed by the brain reveals why certain situations trigger intense emotional and physical reactions. The brain's intricate network of structures, particularly the amygdala, plays a crucial role in perceiving threats and initiating the body's fight-or-flight response. Furthermore, fear memories and conditioning help explain why certain fears persist long after the threat is gone. In this chapter, we'll explore how the brain processes fear, the specific role of the amygdala and related systems, and how fear is encoded in memory and behavior.
How the brain processes fear.
Fear processing in the brain involves multiple regions working together to interpret danger and activate responses to keep us safe. When a potential threat is detected, sensory information sights, sounds, smells is sent to various parts of the brain, which evaluate whether the danger is real and what action is needed.
Key regions of the brain involved in fear processing.
1. The thalamus acts as the brain's relay station, processing incoming sensory information and sending it to appropriate brain regions. 2. The amygdala, the central hub for processing emotions, especially fear. The amygdala interprets signals from the thalamus and determines whether the situation is dangerous. 3. The hypothalamus. Once the amygdala perceives danger, it signals the hypothalamus to initiate the body's fight-or-flight response by activating the sympathetic nervous system. 4. The hippocampus plays a key role in forming and storing memories, particularly memories associated with fear. It helps the brain understand context, for example, distinguishing between a real threat and a harmless situation that resembles a past threat. 5. The prefrontal cortex, PFC. This area of the brain is involved in higher-order thinking and reasoning. The PFC helps regulate and control fear responses by assessing whether a threat is real or exaggerated. In many cases, it can inhibit the amygdala's fear response if the perceived danger in actual
Example of fear processing.
Scenario: imagine walking in a forest and suddenly seeing a snake on the path. The thalamus sends sensory information, visual and auditory, about the snake to the amygdala. The amygdala quickly assesses that the snake could be dangerous and triggers an immediate emotional response, fear. The amygdala signals the hypothalamus, which in turn activates the fight-or-flight system, causing your heart to race, your muscles to tense, and adrenaline to surge. Simultaneously, the hippocampus retrieves relevant memories of past encounters with snakes to add context, helping determine whether this snake is dangerous or not. The prefrontal cortex may later step in and assess whether the fear was warranted. If it determines that the snake is harmless or too far away to be a threat, it may help calm the fear response.
The role of the amygdala and the fight-or-flight response.
The amygdala is the primary brain structure responsible for detecting fear and triggering the fight-or-flight response. This almond-shaped structure is located deep within the brain's temporal lobe and is highly responsive to emotional stimuli, particularly threats.
The amygdala's role in fear.
The amygdala acts as the brain's alarm system, assessing incoming sensory information and determining whether a situation requires a fear response. It operates quickly and often unconsciously, ensuring that we react to potential danger before we've fully processed it rationally. For example, if you hear a sudden loud noise behind you, your amygdala may trigger an immediate startle response, jumping, looking around even before you consciously recognize what the noise was.
The fight-or-flight response.
Once the amygdala detects danger, it activates the body's fight-or-flight response by signaling the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus triggers the release of stress hormones, such as adrenaline and cortisol, which prepare the body to either confront the threat, fight, or flee from it, flight. This response includes several physical changes. Increased heart rate. Blood is pumped more quickly to deliver oxygen and energy to the muscles. Rapid breathing. Breathing quickens to supply the body with extra oxygen. Dilated pupils. Vision sharpens to better detect danger. Tense muscles. Muscles prepare for action, whether to run or defend. Energy surge. Blood sugar levels rise to give the body a burst of energy for immediate action.
Example of fight or flight in action.
Imagine you are hiking and suddenly see a bear. The amygdala instantly detects the danger, signaling the hypothalamus to activate the fight or flight response. Within seconds, your heart is racing, your muscles are ready for action, and your mind is focused solely on survival. Depending on the circumstances, you may decide to flee or stand your ground.
Fight, flight, or freeze.
While the fight or flight response is well known, some individuals also experience a freeze response in which they become immobilized in the face of fear. This response is thought to occur when the brain perceives that neither fight nor flight is a viable option, leading the body to shut down temporarily.
Fear memory and conditioning.
Fear memories are formed when we experience or witness a frightening event. The brain stores these memories to help us avoid similar dangers in the future. However, in some cases, these memories become so powerful that they lead to conditioned fear responses, even in safe or neutral environments.
How fear memories are formed.
Fear memories are primarily stored in two brain regions: the amygdala, which stores the emotional intensity of the fear, the hippocampus, which records the contextual details, for example, time, place of the fear-inducing event. These memories are often vivid and long-lasting, ensuring that we don't forget dangerous situations easily. For instance, if you were in a car accident, your brain might store the memory of the crash, including the sounds, sights, and sensations associated with it. In the future, similar stimuli, for example, the sound of screeching tires might trigger a fear response, even if there's no actual danger present.
Fear conditioning.
Fear conditioning is a form of associative learning in which a neutral stimulus becomes linked to a fear response because it has been paired with a frightening event. This is the basis for many phobias and anxiety disorders.
Example of fear conditioning.
The case of little Albert. In a famous experiment conducted by John Watson, a child named Albert was conditioned to fear a white rat. Initially, Albert showed no fear of the rat, but after repeatedly pairing the sight of the rat with a loud, frightening noise, Albert began to associate the rat with fear. Eventually, he became afraid of the rat even when the noise was absent. This experiment demonstrated how easily fear can be conditioned and generalized to other stimuli. Albert became fearful of other white, furry objects as well.
Extinction and fear memory.
Fear memories can be weakened through a process called extinction, in which the individual is repeatedly exposed to the feared stimulus in a safe environment without any negative consequences. Over time, the brain learns that the stimulus no longer poses a threat, and the fear response diminishes. This principle is often used in therapies, such as exposure therapy for anxiety disorders and phobias.
Example of extinction.
If someone has a fear of flying due to a previous bad experience, they might undergo exposure therapy in which they are gradually exposed to situations related to flying, watching planes take off, visiting an airport without actually experiencing the feared event. Over time, the fear response is reduced.
Conclusion.
Fear is deeply rooted in the brain's mechanisms, with the amygdala playing a central role in detecting threats and triggering the body's fight or flight response. Fear memories, stored in both the amygdala and hippocampus, help us avoid danger, but can sometimes lead to maladaptive fear responses, such as phobias and anxiety disorders. Through understanding how the brain processes fear and forms fear memories, we gain insight into how fear can be managed, mitigated, and even unlearned through techniques like exposure therapy and cognitive reframing.